The Facebook and YouTube algorithms are among the most destructive technologies ever invented. And I think they're among the most destructive technologies ever invented because they push you into an ecosystem that rewards negativity, it rewards conspiracy, it rewards polarization. And it's just a simple calculation on the part of companies like Facebook or Meta that when people are angry, they spend more time on a platform. When people are outraged, they spend more time on a platform. And so the social networks AI algorithms are tuned to get people to stay on the platform as long as possible, because the longer you stay on a platform, the more money that the social media company makes, because the more ads they can sell. Simple calculation.
Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer. It is my pleasure to have David Meerman Scott with us. David is a business growth strategist, advisor to emerging companies, and international best-selling author of 13 books, including Fanocracy and the New Rules of Marketing and PR. His books are published in 30 languages from Arabic to Vietnamese and have sold nearly 1 million copies. David, it's so great to have you on the show.
Hey, Stephan, good to be here.
So first of all, I wanted to ask you, what is the next thing in your opinion, as far as like thing that people are sleeping on or missing the memo, right? So everybody is hot on AI and on security and privacy, going by the wayside. But what's something that is a sleeper or something that people are missing that's coming? It's going to be really big.
Humanity. And so, it's something I've been talking about now for quite a while, is that the more technology we have, the more artificial intelligence driven marketing we have, the more companies automate, the more there is an opportunity for companies to show their human side and engage with people in a way that that brings people together. And I just think that this is such an important time in the history of marketing right now, because so many organizations are not focused on being human, and they suffer as a result. Whether it's, sticking you on hold on the 800 number when you call in as a consumer, whether it's just understanding your customer number is the only thing they care about. I mean, there's so many examples we could talk about, but to me, it's really, really important that in everything we do as marketers, that we bring it back to the human approach.
So how are you applying this human approach in your marketing? So you have 13 books. You could just be building a fan base and a platform and all that, or you could be building rapport and relationships with your readers and prospects. So what are you up to?
I'm not taking new clients by focusing on the revenue that it might generate for me. Instead, I'm taking on new projects, new clients, and new engagements based on what will be interesting and what will be fun and what might be better for the universe. I always think that the more you give to the universe, I call it the universe, call it whatever you want, but the more you give to the universe, the more you get back. And so that's the approach that I have been taking for quite some time. And that's the approach that seems to work best for me. Anything I can do that generates attention without spending money, anything I can do to share my ideas such that I never have to place a sales call, and I haven't had to place a sales call in 22 years, is going to be great. And so for me personally, that's just about sharing things, providing a lot of things for free on my blog, on LinkedIn, on other social networks, just having an approach where I am pushing as much of myself out there as possible, so that then people find me, and then, maybe they buy a book and maybe they want to have me come speak at their event, whatever it might be. But that seems to work for me, and it seems to work for the organizations that employ those ideas.
So you have It sounds kind of like a metaphysical approach to marketing. You said giving to the universe, and the universe kind of gives back. How are you applying metaphysics, intuition, and guidance from the unseen, your unseen support team, I guess? How are you applying this in business and for your clients and their businesses?
I just think that the more helpful you are, the more you truly are giving because you want to give, as opposed to making everything some kind of transaction. Um, the more, and I started talking about it in terms of giving away content more than 20 years ago. The idea of the more you give from the perspective of content on the web, the better it is. And I found that approach works great. And I think that there's so many organizations that don't do that, that they instead are all around, pushing their own products and services, pushing their own ideas, and setting things up in a way that it becomes simply transactional. And sure, that's another way to do business. It's, who am I to say that my ways work better? But I think that besides the idea that the ideas that I espouse work, it also means it's more fun to do business. When you're out there enjoying yourself and sharing things because you want to share them, and accepting client engagements because those might be the most interesting to you, I think ultimately you live a better life than if you're just, working on a transactional basis and taking on assignments that you think might pay more, but in the end probably don't.
I'm curious, how are you incorporating AI into your strategies that you recommend to companies these days, and where do you see things in just, let's say, 3 years time? Is it going to be radically different in terms of how people and businesses will be doing their marketing?
Yeah, I mean, AI is probably the most significant thing that I've seen since 2007. And there was a number of things that happened in 2007. The first iPhone was launched, and I did get myself an iPhone 1. I still have it. Don't use it now, but I still have it. And then social networks took off in 2007 as well. And artificial intelligence now, and what it can do for marketers, is super significant. However, we want to make sure that we remain human in a world of artificial intelligence. But here are a few things that I'm doing and using, which have been helpful to me. You are recording this, but if I were recording this, I would run it through a transcription engine to get a transcript of our discussion. Then I might run it through a large language model to summarize it, provide bullet points to it. So all those things super easy to use. Different AI tools for. I'm not that great at headlines, so I will frequently take a draft of a blog post or a section of a book and drop it into ChatGPT or something similar, and see if it can generate at least the starting point of a headline for me. And usually it works pretty well. I am a big fan of a company called Lately.ai, and Lately.ai has a tool that takes my long form content that I've created and then turn it into short form content. So in practical terms, the way that works is, if I write a blog post, maybe it's 500 words or 750 words. What I used to do was take a look at that blog post and try to come up with a couple of tweets related to that blog post. But now I use this AI tool called Lately AI to do that. And what it does is it automatically takes my blog post and then cuts it into some number of tweets. It might be 10 or 15. And then I can use the tool to schedule those tweets, one a day or one every 3 days or two a week or whatever it is. Um, and that's been really, really helpful for my business because it's allowed me to automate something that I wasn't really very good at to begin with, and that was generally fairly time consuming, which is turn those those long form blog posts into short form tweets. The other thing that I've done, which has worked out really well, is that I've taken all of my roughly 2,000 blog posts that I've written since 2004, plus the content of 6 of my books, and uploaded them to a proprietary database that I put ChatGPT over the top of, and I'm able to query my private database. And I've worked with a couple of clients who have done the same thing. Now, in every way that I like to use AI, and in every way that I suggest to my clients that they use AI, and every way that I'm talking about AI in my books and so on, what I constantly come back to is the idea that for something like the large language models like ChatGPT, they're just predicting what the next word in a string is using public internet data. And yes, that has value, but by definition, you're using something that already exists, number one. And by definition, you're using the next predictable outcome, number two. So it's less useful to be super creative. So I like anything that uses your proprietary content and makes it better. So I shared with you 2 examples. Lately, AI takes my existing long form content, creates new short form content from it. My own proprietary database of my own content is a way that I can create new blog posts, but only from my own content, not using the public internet data. Another great example of how I use AI and I recommend to people is I'm an advisor to HubSpot. I've been on their advisory board since the very beginning. 2007, I joined their advisory board when they had $250,000 in annual revenue, and now they're at well over $2 billion in annual revenue. And I'm also a HubSpot customer and have been a HubSpot customer for quite a number of years. And they have something called ChatSpot, which is part of their service, which allows me, and they're a CRM, a marketing, sales, and customer support software service. They allow me to query my customer data within HubSpot using natural language, which is driven by AI. And I love that because I'm not a power user of their software. I don't know how to necessarily go in and get all the data that I might want. I might want to say, before I go to a speech in, let's say, South Korea, I might want to find out, do I have any blog subscribers located in South Korea? And I wouldn't know how to find that data. But with ChatSpot, I just enter a natural language query, do I have any blog subscribers located in South Korea? And it gives me an answer instantly. So those are 3 ways that I like to use AI, suggest people use AI, which is all of it related to their own proprietary content, which I think are the most interesting ways that AI is being used. Less so is using AI to query public internet data. And by the way, just an aside, 3 of my books are in the 187,000 books that are used within the so-called Books 3 database that many of the AI large language models have been trained on. And the New York Times data was also used to train, and many other news publications were used to train. And I'm absolutely convinced that we are going to be entering an era soon where that content will either need to be removed or will need to be cited or will need to be compensated. We're not going to be able to query the entire public internet database and books and everything forever. And so that is going to change the way that we are interfacing with these different AI engines.
So, is there some sort of class action lawsuit underway to compensate the authors of that Books3 database or any of these other databases that?
There's not that I know of with the Books3 in terms of class action, although individual authors have sued various people. The New York Times, of course, famously has sued OpenAI and Microsoft for the use of their content. And clearly what that says to me is the New York Times probably approached them initially and was not able to resolve the dispute, so they decided to sue. But I do think that as these things begin to resolve, that that the output of chatbots, for example, ChatGPT, is less likely to be what it is now, which is on the text-based version, ChatGPT, you type in a query, a natural language result comes back, but there's no citations to the original content. I think it'll end up being probably more like the way Wikipedia now it works, which is you enter a query, you get find a Wikipedia entry for whatever it is you're looking for, and it's not just the text; it's the text plus the citations to the original content. Yeah. I suspect that's where we're going. We'll see, but I suspect that's where we're going.
Well, I would hope so. That's good for content creators as well as consumers, rather than having a bunch of the internet closed off to the LLMs. I think that doesn't help anybody really. It just
I think that's probably right. I think it's a lot like Napster a couple decades ago. Napster came along and provided file sharing for anybody to be able to get music without having to pay for it. And of course, that's what the market wanted. Consumers wanted to get lots and lots of music in digital formats. They didn't want to have to buy an entire $10 album in order to get one song, which was the concept that had been active prior to that. And so Napster comes along, and the music industry shuts it down. And it was a couple of years later that iTunes started, which allowed you to initially just to buy one song, and then Spotify and Pandora and Apple Music and other things also came around a bit later. But now, you can subscribe to, tons and tons and tons of music and get what you want and for a small subscription fee. And although there's a lot of people who complain about it, music artists make money from it, the record labels make money from it, consumers get what they want. So I suspect that these large language models, business models, will end up changing accordingly because this is what consumers want. Clearly, this is one of the fastest growing uses of technology ever, ChatGPT and the other chatbots. And at the same time, the people who create this content, companies like the New York Times, authors like me, want their work to maybe be compensated, but for me, it's a lot more of it, not so much compensated, but I want my work to be cited. Yeah. There's many times that I've gone in and searched on an esoteric topic. Like, for example, I wrote a book called Marketing Lessons from the Grateful Dead. And if I do an esoteric search about marketing and the Grateful Dead, I see my content come up. Or I invented a concept called newsjacking. It's taken off, it's become popular, so other people are writing about it. But if I go in and I do a search on one of the chatbots, ChatGPT or whatever, and I search on newsjacking, I'm seeing essentially my content appear, but without citing me as the originator of that content. So Things will change. It will shake out, and it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out.
Yeah. Now, one thing I think is going to shake out or evolve quite significantly in regards to this is people become more and more skilled at using the AI as at least a first draft creator, if not an entire content piece finisher. So that means that maybe a website that would normally, with the amount of available time and resources for a company or a person, could potentially be 100 times larger, 1,000 times larger with the help of AI. And so consequently, we're going to be awash with so much content.
Or it could be the opposite. It could be that you hack together a first draft of something and then drop it into the AI to get it cleaned up, spell checked, proofread, all that sort of thing, is another way to go.
Yeah.
But I don't think that it's effective for companies to create content for their blogs or whatever, only using these AI tools because number one, it's not original, and original writing is interesting because it's got unique turns of phrases, unique ways of thinking about ideas, and it's hard for AI to actually come up with that. And you can't copyright it is another reason why companies should avoid it. You can't copyright content that was generated from a machine. And it's just not generally not as interesting as something that you can create yourself. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I know there's a lot of people who take the opposite stand as I do, and are massive cheerleaders for these sorts of ideas, and that's great. I love that. I love that there's a debate about them, and who knows where it will shake out. But I suspect that the ways that I've been talking about it are the direction that we will end up going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just recently heard of a study that Amazon Web Services, their AI lab, put together. They found that a shocking amount of the web is already made up of poor quality AI generated and translated content. I was like,
I see it all the time, yeah, and 100%. That is exactly what's happening. There's an explosion of this content, and it's definitely happening right now. And I don't think companies are doing themselves a service if they're putting that kind of content out. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
I have this theory that there will be some sort of certification, just like there's organic certified for AI free books. There's no AI involved in generating this 400 page book, and it has maybe a sticker on it.
I'm working on the new 9th edition of my New Rules of Marketing and PR book. So this book originally came out in 2007. This I'm holding in my hand is the 8th edition, and I'm working on the 9th edition. And in my contract for the 9th edition from Wiley, my publisher, there was a clause in there about AI generated content in the book. And it was the first time that clause has appeared in there. So that's sort of interesting to me. I think you're right. That that especially the large publishers, and I suspect small publishers too, are now specifically requiring authors to sign as part of their agreement to disclose how they do or don't use AI in the creation of their work.
So I think the publishing industry, not just newspapers, but book publishers are, I would guess, quite scared of the future as far as like how people are going to consume content, whether they're going to pay for it, whether it's going to be from AIs that are not copyright enforced or anything like that. And so the idea of a million book bestseller might be not in the cards in the future for publishers. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Interesting question. I think publishers have been paranoid for a long time. Um, they've been paranoid since the birth of the internet, as far as I can tell. Things have changed dramatically since the internet. And ebooks came along and they did a good job with those. Audiobooks came along, and they did a good job with those. But yes, all of those models are changing, and publishers have to figure out how they're going to survive in the new world. And um, I mean, of course, there'll always be niche publishers, but is there still room for the very, very large publishers? I don't know. I sure hope so, because not only do they publish my books, but I love to read and am constantly buying. I think I bought, and just this week I bought 3 books, hardcover books that I very much support authors who are creating great content. So we'll see. I think reading as a form of enjoyment, reading as a form of learning, is not going away. It's just a matter of how people will read.
Yeah, but the thing is that people are becoming more and more instant gratification oriented. The dopamine reward center of our brains are being hijacked by these different apps and social media platforms and so forth, and we're being trained to have the attention span of a goldfish. So reading an entire book may not be in the cards for most people in the future. I don't know.
That might be true of many people. Unfortunately, um, I um, I purposely push myself to avoid that,
Yeah.
and not get sucked into those social networks as much as I could get sucked into them. I try every day to make sure that I'm very mindful of when and how I use social media. The things that I love to do on my off time generally involve not having any social media near me. I love to do long distance backpacking. I'm a surfer. I love to go to live music events and do all sorts of different things that I try to avoid that whole social media thing. But you're right, they're addictive, and I think that especially Facebook and YouTube, the Facebook and YouTube algorithms are among the most destructive technologies ever invented. And I think they're among the most destructive technologies ever invented because, as you said, they push you into an ecosystem that rewards negativity. It rewards conspiracy. It rewards polarization, and it's just a simple calculation on the part of companies like Facebook or Meta, that when people are angry, they spend more time on a platform. When people are outraged, they spend more time on a platform. And so the social networks AI algorithms are tuned to get people to stay on the platform as long as possible, because the longer you stay on a platform, the more money that the social media company makes, because the more ads they can sell. Simple calculation. And so they know that when you're angry, you're likely to stay on more. And I believe that this is what's led to so much polarization in the United States politically. It's led to so many conspiracy theories. It's led to lots of things that are going on in our culture, can directly be drawn back to the social media algorithms, especially those of Facebook and YouTube. And because that's where people spend so much of their time. And I think it's super dangerous. And I think that those social networking companies know it, but are generally unwilling to address it in any meaningful way.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier in the conversation the term that you came up with, newsjacking. And it seems to me that there might be a corollary here outrage jacking. That Facebook is actually hijacking outrage and monetizing it, and further amplifying it.
Yeah, well, I mean, keeping in mind that Facebook is not the company that creates the content, they're just the company
Right.
that amplifies it. And, I think that there's been a disservice to humanity when there's been so much discussion about free speech recently, when it's not, people are not talking about the right thing. So much talk about free speech, freedom, 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 going on. You've always been free to create content, going back thousands of years. You could write it down, you could publish a newspaper or a magazine, or put it on a piece of paper and stick it on a tree. Yeah, you can publish that content. What's different now is that those social networks and their algorithms have the capability to expand the reach and to augment the number of people who can see something, so that you can create a piece of content that could be seen by millions in a very short period of time. And people have been complaining, oh, it's freedom to be able to communicate. No, as far as I'm concerned, there should never be a freedom that says that your content can be amplified. Yes, you can create it, but there should never be so-called freedoms around amplification. And I think that the leaders of social networks and politicians who don't understand have fallen into the trap of mixing up the idea of freedom to create with freedom of amplification. And they should be two different things. Amplification has very dangerous connotations. And, if I were to create a piece of content, um, then my friends can find it, even if it's not amplified. But if I were to create a piece of content and then Facebook were to amplify it, that's a very different thing. And so it's not something that lots of people are prepared to really think about the ramifications to. But I'm frightened for the upcoming US election in 2024 around the idea of amplification, and potentially all the deep fakes that will be created and whatnot. It's a dark side of what's going on with
for
AI.
sure. And what was that movie on Netflix? The Great Hack or something like that. That just really exposed how bad it can be when these PR firms or whatever they want to call themselves are manipulating public opinion through nefarious, surreptitious means, and creating fake accounts and sock puppet, meat puppet accounts, and all that on social platforms, and swaying public opinion and causing a different outcome in elections, and it's wild to think about.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be. I think we're in for some issues this particular election cycle, especially because these social media algorithms go so quickly, and where something can be created and it can go out super fast. So we'll see. I suspect maybe the Super Bowl we'll start to see some examples of that. That's coming up very soon. But November 2024 is going to be a time that we all have to pay attention to what's going on, and always be thinking, is this real or is this not real?
Crazy times. So it's not the same thing that you have freedom to amplify content as freedom to create the content. I like that. But what this creates is a potential for a curation algorithm like Facebook's or YouTube's to become a censorship algorithm. So how do you balance that so that the powers that be that are kind of pulling the purse strings are not censoring out dissenting opinions and things that they don't want to get amplified, and thus they don't, even though they really should be?
It's a challenging topic, and I think that I probably wouldn't use the word censorship when it comes to amplification. And I think that's where there's a lot of misunderstanding today. I think true censorship is when you say, no, you can't post that. You know, I think the platforms can say, oh, okay, you can publish it. We're just not going to amplify it. And then if you get into the situation where they want to amplify one side and not the other, that's super dangerous. And I'm not sure that we saw many examples of that. I know people seem to think that there were a lot of examples of that, but as far as I'm concerned, there hasn't been a lot of that. However, I do, again, think that there's a big difference between simply allowing something to be published versus the amplification of
Yeah,
it.
there's something called
And I
shadow
wouldn't go so
banning.
far as to say that amplification.
Are you familiar with that concept or term of shadow banning?
Tell me what that means.
So when the content creator is not notified that their account is being dialed down, and so anything that they post automatically doesn't get any reach to the degree that nobody sees it, maybe even not their mom, but they're not notified. And so that's a shadow ban.
Yep, I'm definitely familiar with that.
So it's certainly an interesting time to be alive. I mean, there's a lot of new things that our parents, grandparents, and so forth didn't have to deal with, like getting shadow banned. So
Yeah, and you know, it keeps bringing me back to how important it is to remain human in this world, and whether that's you yourself personally, your family, what you do as a marketer, and how you engage with the world as an individual or as an organization. You know, the deeper you dig into the AI world, the social media algorithm driven world, the world of online content, I think in many ways, the less human you become. And, you know, that's coming from a guy who wrote the New Rules of Marketing and PR, which is about how to do all those things. And I'm not saying that don't do the things that I write about in my books, but I am saying make sure that you disengage. Make sure that whatever it is you love to do in the offline world, that you do more of it. You know, you spend more time with your family. You spend more time outside in nature. You spend more time face to face with your customers. You spend more time engaging with your employees, person to person, and these things I think will help a lot, and and will make you a better person, I think, and perhaps even live longer. You know, because you're engaging in the way that, as you said, your grandparents engaged in. I've been thinking a lot about that recently, and I know it's super important for me personally, and so whenever I have an opportunity to um, disengage with the online world and jump deep into the offline world, I'll take that. I'll take that opportunity.
So that's all great advice. I love that. I'm totally on board with that. And for somebody who's an information worker, they might have a real problem with all that time that they have to spend indoors at the computer because that's their livelihood. They can't be outside on hikes and face-to-face meetings all the time. They've got to be on Zoom. They've got to be coding stuff and writing stuff on the computer. So what sort of tips do you have for that kind of situation? Like, what are some of your best practices for attention hygiene while you're at a computer or on your phone?
As much as you can, do some movement when you're on. Like right now, as we're talking, I'm standing up. I find that that's helpful. I find that if I can take a Zoom call while I'm outside walking, I will try to do so. I block out parts of my day. That's really important. I typically will block um, the entire morning up until lunch. And that's time that I have to myself. And I do some exercise. I breakfast, often with my wife. Um, if I can get outside, I get outside. During the summer, almost every morning I'm outside. Um, and then I sort of have a period of time, which is typically after lunch until about 5-ish, so a 3 or 4 hour period where I concentrate my online, back to back Zoom calls kind of thing, so that it's all happening in one chunk. And then when I read, I typically read print books. I do have a Kindle for ebooks when I'm traveling on airplanes. I do listen to audiobooks when I'm in the car, but as much as I can, I try to be unplugged when I'm at home and do magazines and print books. So that seems to work for me. Physical exercise, getting outside my entire morning as much as I can. There might be an exception here and there, but most mornings I'm unplugged for the most part until midday, and then I have my meetings, my Zooms, and my social engagement on social media, all concentrated within a short period of time mid-afternoon.
So, as a prolific author, how are you creating an environment conducive to writing a 400-page book or whatever the length is that you're trying to hit? Like there's a certain skill set required to write a good cohesive and compelling book, and just everyone has their approach to their style of writing or whatever. Do they carve out a certain number of hours in the day and they have to write something, or they just stare at the screen? What do you do?
So those morning hours that I said I'm not doing Zoom and plugged into social media, typically, and at least a couple of those hours is when I'm at my best to write. I have a beautiful light filled space to write. It's in the room down the hall. This is the room where I have my video studio, but in another room down the hall is where I have the place that I write. And a couple of other things that I think about when I write. Number one is I always want to create something that is original to me, and that I always think about what are the patterns in the universe that I'm seeing that other people aren't seeing. And that usually becomes the basis for a book. So this book called Fanocracy, I wrote with my daughter Reiko. It's about how to build fandom culture. And it was some ideas that she and I had, that we saw patterns in the universe that other people weren't seeing, and we wanted to write them down. This is a book that came out maybe a decade ago. It's called Marketing Lessons from the Grateful Dead. I co-wrote it with HubSpot co-founder and CEO Brian Halligan, and Bill Walton, the NBA Basketball Hall of Famer, wrote the foreword to it. We were seeing patterns in the universe, that the way the Grateful Dead did their marketing, although they didn't call it marketing, was unique and worthy of talking about. So the first thing I do when I write something is I say, what is unique and interesting? What is the pattern in the universe that I'm seeing that other people aren't seeing? To make sure that what I'm writing about is truly original and truly worthy of spending the time to write about it. And then as I'm writing a project, I always think of it as not writing 400 pages, because that's daunting, but rather writing 150 blog posts, or however many blog posts it is, to get to the word count I want. And it's a lot easier to think about how can I write one blog post a day for 150 days, which becomes a book, than to think, oh my gosh, I have to write 70,000 words. That's daunting to me. But writing a blog post a day for
Yeah.
150 days, and sure, I'll take time off. So maybe over the course of a year, that's much, much easier to handle.
Yeah. I love that. That's a great approach. So how do you end up selling 1 million books? Like that's a rare feat to get to 1 million books sold. I mean, you have that across all your books. Sometimes it's just one big hit, and then it's that one hit wonder. But regardless of how the 1 million book mark is hit, that's you're very rare in the book authorship world. So, what are some of your secrets?
Yeah, it is pretty rare to sell significant copies of books. I think, I don't know if I would call it a secret because I talk about it all the time, but the first and I think probably the most important thing is what I just talked about is what's your original idea? What is,
Mm.
and the way I like to think about it, what is the pattern in the universe that you see that nobody else is seeing? Because um, I'm a big fan of live music. I've been to over 950 live music shows since I was 15 years old, 104 Grateful Dead concerts since I was 17 years old. And what's interesting to me about live music is that there's some bands who are cover bands. They play other people's music. A noble cause. They have fans. And then there's people who write original music and perform their own music, also a noble cause. When thinking about writing, I always push people to be original. Don't be a cover band. Create a book idea that's wholly unique and wholly original. But most books that I see, I'm often asked to write endorsements and so on. Most books that I see are in one way or another, you're either a conscious or unconscious rehash of ideas that other people have written about. So the first step is just to have some great and original content. The next step I would suggest is just getting those ideas in the book in front of as many people as you possibly can, so that more people are exposed to the ideas, and then some people may choose to take the leap to spend $20 on your, or whatever the dollars are, on your book. And the way that I've generally done that is by figuring out how I can get my ideas exposed to as many people as possible. So when a new book comes out, frequently what I do is I tell my speaking clients, and I put out on my website and other places, hey, if you want me to speak for free, this is an opportunity. Normally you have to pay me the big bucks to have me come speak at your conference, but for a very limited time, if you simply buy a copy of my book for everyone in the audience, I will show up and speak at no charge. So that's one way I do it. Another way I do it is through people like you, people who have podcasts, people who have video shows, people who are creating content that might want to share my content. When my book Fanocracy launched several years ago, leading up to the launch date, I recorded over 150 podcast episodes with other, I don't have my own podcast, but with other podcasters like you. And and I asked each of them if they would please hold the episode until the launch date of the book. So 150 roughly podcasts all dropped the same week that the book came out. And that was enough interest, generated enough interest with people, and people bought enough copies that week the book hit the Wall Street Journal bestseller list. And when I share ideas like that with people, it seems daunting, and the vast majority of authors won't do it because it's a big effort to do either of those sorts of things. It's a big effort to travel the country speaking for free if you're normally a paid speaker. It's a big effort to record 150 podcast episodes over the course of about 6 months. It's a big effort. And most people will happily spend 500 hours writing a book. But when I say to them, you've also got to spend 500 hours marketing the book, almost nobody does that. So I think it's a matter of just making sure that you do focus on that marketing aspect of the book as well. And then I've found that my books have done extremely well in markets outside of the United States. I'm published in 30 different languages. And that's been great for me to get speaking engagements outside the US. I've spoken in nearly 50 countries and sharing my ideas in those different countries is super fun. Just in the last couple of months, I've been to Rome, I've been to Seoul, South Korea, and it's great. My books are in Italian, my books are in Korean, and then that generates interest, and some people might want to have me come. So making those ideas spread globally by eagerly participating in virtual as well as in-person events in other countries is a great way to get the ideas of a book out there.
It's amazing that you get your book published in so many different languages. Is that something that you had to spearhead, or was that just completely handled by your publisher?
The way the publishing world works is that if somebody wants to publish, I don't think I have a copy here to show you, but if somebody wants to publish a book in a different language, let's say South Korean in that example, publisher reaches out to the American publisher who holds the rights, says, we'd like to publish the book. So the South Korean publisher buys the rights from the American publisher, and then they can create a South Korean version of my work. That's how it works. And so the challenge is you have to generate the interest in the book such that the foreign publishers can find it, and then that they want to publish it. So part of that is hitting a bestseller list. Part of that is getting some sales. So back to the Fanocracy example, when this book came out, I knew that if I was able to generate enough sales in a week for it to hit the Wall Street Journal bestseller list, which is a weekly list, it was published every week, that generates attention among publishers outside the United States. So worked my butt off recording 150 podcasts, and among other things that helped to generate enough sales to hit the Wall Street Journal bestseller list. And then publishers outside North America, outside the United States, read that Wall Street Journal bestseller list every single week, and then are looking for the types of books they like to publish. Oh, Fanocracy, that's interesting, a book about fandom culture. Maybe we should see if the rights are available in our language. And then they reach out. So just a lot of effort to make it happen, but I find that it's something I enjoy doing.
Yeah, and it pays off in many ways, not just for you, but for so many people in the world. You reveal your light and share your wisdom with the world and make the world a better place.
Thank you. Very, 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 very kind of you to say so.
Awesome. So I know we're out of time. If our listener wants to learn from you more, where would you want to send them?
So if there's an interest in fandom culture, I've got a website at fanocracy.com. You can learn all about my ideas, find my blog, inquire about speaking, davidmeermanscott.com. On most of the social networks like Instagram and X, I am DM Scott, DMSCOTT.
Awesome. Thank you, David.
My pleasure, Stephan. Good to meet you. Thank you very much.
And thank you, listener. We'll catch you on the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.